All right, welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast you listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast you listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia, here with my co-host, Brian Pfeiffer. What's up, everyone? Good to be back. It's been a minute. As some of you know, we like to broadcast once a week on Sunday nights. That's about to change, and it's also been a minute since we've broadcasted. So, yeah, just wanted to say hello again, encourage you to subscribe and share whatever it is you do. But, yeah, just keep in touch somehow. And also note that moving forward, we're going to start recording on Thursday evenings. So, again, if you're not subscribed, if you just check in, just know that Thursday evenings will now be the date that we broadcast. So in tonight's edition of We Rise Fighting, we're going to catch up a little bit on some stuff that's happening in the labor movement and a lot of it on what's happening with Palestine and labor. So as usual now, we'd like to start the show with news briefs, and that's just a couple of bullet points that I saw online that I thought were interesting but didn't quite make the show, but I would encourage listeners to check it out if it strikes their interest. The first headline reads, New Jersey transit engineers strike averted for now as Biden takes emergency action. And you can find that in newjersey.com. And then the second and final news brief that I'm going to share tonight is workers go on strike at five-star Paris hotel where International Olympic Committee members are staying for the Olympics. You can find that in the Associated Press, apnews.com. And just wanted to share that to, stay in tune with the international front a little bit, and also just to make the point, as we have made before, that you want to go for the jugular, right? Whether it's the timing of a strike, or whether it's the nature of the strike, or the group of workers that are on strike that produce a certain labor or carry out a certain labor that's just critical for operations. And if they go on strike, everything falls apart. We have to start thinking about stuff like this. We have to start thinking about the jugulars. So just putting these out there for now. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's going to introduce tonight's music. So over to you, Brian.
In this episode of We Rise Fighting, we honor Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagon, who died on July 16th, 2024. Dr. Reagon was a deep historian, storyteller, mother, artist, educator, a founding member of the Freedom Singers, organized by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, in the Albany movement in Georgia, and founder of Sweet Honey in the Rock. Dr. Reagon supported many workers' actions and unions as well, and worked with many who did the same, such as Dr. Howard Zinn. According to a July 26, 2024, Friday Labor's Folklore email, after being suspended from Albany State for her activism, she briefly attended Spelman College. Dr. Johnson Reagon dropped out to tour with the Freedom Singers, hitting the road in a Buick station wagon, raising money for SNCC. The group performed throughout the Deep South, singing at churches, concert halls, college campuses, and coffee houses. In 1970, she returned to Spelman to finish her bachelor's degree. Moving to Washington, D.C., she received her Ph.D. from Howard University in 1975. In 1973, Dr. Johnson Reagon founded Sweet Honey in the Rock, an all-woman, all-female a cappella group. Sweet Honey toured the world, recording 27 albums, 3 of which received Grammy nominations. She worked as a curator at the Smithsonian Institution and served on the advisory committee of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Dr. Johnson Reagon received the MacArthur Genius Grant in 1989 and the Charles Frankel Prize in the Humanities in 1995. Here's the ballad of Harry T. Moore by Sweet Honey in the Rock.
It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say, freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. It happened in Florida, the land of flowers. It was on a Christmas night. Men came stealing through the orange grove, men of hate carrying dynamite. It was to a little cottage, the family the name of Moore. At the window hung sprigs of holly, a fine wreath at the door. It was on a Christmas evening, and the family prayers were said. Mother, father, daughter, and grandmother went to bed. The father's name was Harry Moore of the NAACP. He fought for the right for us to live. Black folk must be free. It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. It could not be in Jesus' name beneath the bedroom floor. On Christmas night, the killers hid the bomb for Harry Moore. It could not be in Jesus' name the killers took his life and blew his home to pieces and killed his faithful wife. It could not be for the sake of love they did this awful thing. For when the bomb exploded and the Moors died, no hearts were heard to sing. It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. And certainly no angels sang peace on earth, goodwill to men. But around the world an echo hurled a question, when? When will people in Jesus' name, and when will they by prayer know that each one has the right to stand up everywhere? When will people, for the sake of peace and the sake of democracy, know that no bomb you can make can stop us from being free? It seems I hear Harry Moore from the earth, his voice still cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. So if you see old Harry Moore walking on a Christmas night, don't you fear and run and hide. He has no dynamite, for in his heart is only love for all the human race, and for each and every one of us to have our rightful place. And this he says, our Harry Moore, as from the grave he cries. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies. Freedom never dies, I say. Freedom never dies. No bomb can kill the dreams I hold, for freedom never dies.
Okay, listeners, tonight in our Labor for Palestine updates, which we've been starting the We Rise Fighting podcast with for months, we will continue this evening, starting with labor workers join in surrounding the Capitol in D.C. to protest the war criminal Netanyahu's address before U.S. Congress on July 24th. It has been 9 months since the UE, United Electrical Workers, and CWA, the communication workers, issued an online petition calling for a U.S. ceasefire to the ongoing genocidal war, U.S.-Israel genocidal war against the Palestinian people. There has been a noticeable growth in organized labor support since then. The trajectory and speed of this movement has accelerated recently to the point that 6 international unions representing 7 million union members comprising the National Labor Network for a Ceasefire, went on record July 23rd demanding an end to U.S. arms sales to Israel. The very next day, July 24th, the United Auto Workers, the UAW, endorsed a huge Washington, D.C. rally against the appearance of Netanyahu, the war criminal, before the U.S. Congress. And these developments, listeners, are at laborforpalestine.net. The UAW, and our next news item, the UAW 4811 in California, member supporters protest the UC regents over repression, union busting, and support for genocide. In a report at laborforpalestine.net, dozens of University of California UAW 4811 members rallied and protested on July 17th at the UC Regents meeting at the San Francisco Mission Bay campus to demand the dropping of charges against their members, against increasing repression and union busting, along with support for the U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza by the U.S. regents. Members have been attacked and beaten by police and at UCLA, Zionist and fascist. At the same time, the Gavin Newsom's Highway Patrol and Los Angeles Police under Karen Bass have been used to attack encampments at UCLA. Workers said these union-busting tactics are also a threat to other UC workers throughout the entire system and all working people. They also discussed the effort by the legislature to push UC management and regents to introduce even more restrictions and regulations to prevent debate and discussion on Zionism and other issues. Many developments are taking place in the UC system regarding the support for Palestine. Listeners can check out laborforpalestine.net as well as UAW 4811, which represents at least 48,000 members throughout the UC system. All right, Rick, do you have a report for Educators for Palestine for us today?
Yeah, Brian, we've already talked about this a couple of times, and it's one of the things that's out there in the labor movement that's really inspiring me right now, something that I think is righteous. It's Educators for Palestine, and this seems to be a group within, or doesn't seem to be, it is a group within the National Education Association, and I've been following them on laborforpalestine.net and also been following them on Instagram, and they recently on July 25th, posted the following statement. The rank and file members comprising NEA, National Education Association, Educators for Palestine, are deeply disappointed that our union leadership has opted to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris for president despite no fundamental shift in her positions from the current Biden administration. Harris's statement about the protests are alarming and do not align with the values of free speech she claims to represent. I'm going to pause there for a second and just say that that's a statement that came out on whitehouse.gov, where she comes either really close or just straight up calls protesters terrorists, saying they're connected to Hamas, things like that, when protesters were rightfully protesting the presence of Netanyahu in Congress, speaking to Congress. So that's how she spoke about the protesters outside. I'm sure that statement is still up on whitehouse.gov, the official White House website. Let me carry on and continue reading this statement from Educators for Palestine, though. Our union cannot support any candidate who demonizes protesters and protects genocidal foreign leaders. Netanyahu is wanted for crimes against humanity, and Harris is more alarmed by spray paint. Many Jewish EFP members and allies were present at the demonstration in D.C. and reported the only violence was from the police. We remain steadfast in our call for NEA to leverage its power to demand actionable shifts in policy towards Palestinian people, and that NEA call on Harris to support an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, pledging to end all military aid to Israel and end the Israeli occupation of Palestine. Propelled by rank-and-file pressure, NEA recently joined 6 other major labor unions to issue a statement calling on Biden to stop arming Israel. NEA should revoke its endorsement of Harris and Biden until they comply. Also, we know worker solidarity is fundamental to liberation. We are concerned that NEA is producing material and completing our work that would typically be completed by the very staff our union is currently locking out. We urge NEA to reach a contract with its staff so that no scab labor is used to complete NEA initiatives. And I should just mention for that last part that there's NEA staff, in other words, like staff organizers, the union staff that's on strike in DC right now. So that's what that last section was about. So yeah, that's the news that's coming out. That's kind of what I wanted to report on. I was mentioning to Brian right before we started the show. That's the thing that's inspiring me the most right now. There are actually other struggles taking place. Some of them we mentioned at the beginning of the show, but that's the one that's really inspiring me right now because it's principled and it's a step away from these knee-jerk reactions to endorse Kamala Harris that I just don't understand. I can't understand. I've been following politics for more than half my life now. And, what I'm seeing is that, or what I've seen, better stated, is that if you keep on voting for the lesser of two evils, then you end up with a candidate who's to the right of Ronald Reagan. Kamala Harris, in her record as Attorney General in California, she made it a point to extend the sentences of nonviolent prisoners, so as to take advantage of their cheap labor, to take advantage of their prison labor. So, I have that in the back of my mind. And how come the labor movement can't even discuss this? How come our union leaders don't acknowledge this? And I'm also wondering, it's like, how come our union leaders aren't even acknowledging the railway strike and the Biden administration's role in shutting down the railway strike, as well as the vast majority of Democrats in Congress in shutting down the railway strike? Like, what is going on? And like, did our union leaders not see this? Do they not care? Do they not give a fuck? Like, I mean, that's what solidarity is all about, And I think, again, sorry to kind of go off on a tangent here, but you all have heard us talk about this many times. The power of that railway strike, what could have been, 2 years ago when 10,000 workers were set to go on strike, 10,000 railway workers, and the media was going nuts. They were saying it was going to cost the economy $2 billion a day, going to cost the economy $2 billion a day, and over time, we've discussed this on this show, and maybe you can't measure exactly how much money, a strike like that is going to quote unquote cost the economy. That's okay. Like to hear the bourgeois media, to hear the capitalist media talking about a strike in that respect, like fearful of a strike of 10,000 workers, I think that's where workers have their power, not in the ballot box. I think that's the stuff that makes them freak out a little bit, when profits are concerned, when revenues are concerned, when business isn't business as usual. And, there's something that the bosses and the capitalists can't control, a strike of railway workers. I think that's where working class people have their power. And I think that's what we should be promoting and be conscious of and be growing and supporting and giving to strike funds and stuff like that. I think those acts are more powerful than voting for Kamala Harris, a genocidal candidate. She has made no indication that she's going to deviate from the Biden administration's stance on Palestine. And if anything, she has spoken in front of AIPAC enthusiastically. So I guess all of that just to say that this was the one article that really did something for me this week. And that's why I'm only reporting on that one. I didn't want to, bring the energy down with any, like, I like for this show to be a source of inspiration and letting people know where some righteous and principled struggle is at. And so I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And go back to you, Brian. You have some news on the international front from Venezuela. But yeah, thanks, folks, for hearing me out a little bit. We're in that season right now where all you hear from people is you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. You got to vote for the lesser of two evils. And this is the most important election of our time. And lesser of two. Well, again, lesser of two evils has gotten us a candidate that's to the right of Ronald Reagan. So where are we going with this? How much time do you want, as James Baldwin pleaded out in one interview? How much time do you want for your progress? So that's the thoughts, that's the feels, that's the analysis. That's where my heart is at today. Thank you, listeners, always for listening and for hearing me out on this particular thought. Maybe it'll carry some weight for you, give you something to think about. But Yeah, that's kind of the view from here. So now for real, on to you, Brian, if you could report on Venezuela coming in from the international front.
All right, thanks, Rick. For many reports in Venezuela analysis on Venezuela, we encourage readers to check out there, as well as for Orinoco Tribune. It's ORINOCO TRIBUNE.com. Many articles and analysis there regarding developments in Venezuela. American Association of Jurists condemn U.S. interventionism in Venezuela's presidential elections. Report from the Tribune. Voting for the presidency is taking place across Venezuela today, July 28th. The article states that, quote, through a statement issued on Friday, July 26th, AAJ stated that the U.S. interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela began with a widespread media campaign where various personalities of the U.S. and allied governments openly called to vote for the opposition. In the last few days, probably because they realized that the affirmation campaign did not produce the expected results, they began to create the narrative of the possibility of an electoral fraud, the AAJ statement continued. In several statements, they asked the people to vote for the opposition and falsely claimed to have evidence of the alleged alteration of the electoral result by the government headed by Nicolas Maduro. And listeners, as Rick and I here have talked many times with independent nations that are fighting, trying to find their way to independence. In the case of Venezuela, the U.S. and other Western nations colonized and neo-colonized Venezuela for over 500 years until Hugo Chavez in 1999 had a people's coup. And in the space of the last 25 years, there's been major advancements in the nation, which of course the United States does not want to have. They want to have a modern day Monroe doctrine to have Latin American and Caribbean countries under the boot heel of U.S. imperialism, and specifically U.S. corporations and the banks. And the Venezuelan people en masse for 25 years have voted for Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro as presidents to resist U.S. imperialism and to have their independence. Despite the interference and sanctions and the designation being labeled a quote-unquote state sponsor of terrorism by the Obama administration, as we mentioned here on other episodes as well, the Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro administration since 1999 have made many economic and other advances, such as low-cost housing for the people, improved transportation and better healthcare with the help of Cuba, and they continue to be made with the assistance of Socialist Cuba, Iran, Russia, and Socialist China. And here, We Rise Fighting will always never forget the heating oil assistance program that was run by Hugo Chavez, the former president of Venezuela who died prematurely, that assisted many poor and working people in the U.S. In fact, when Rick and I were in graduate school in 2005, this program was operating, but under the U.S. attacks of the Citgo Corporation, PDVSA, seizing many assets of Venezuela illegally. There's many lawsuits about this on international legal arenas, but it's been very challenging for Venezuela to do this now. But that heating oil program assisted many here in the United States from winter and freezing in the winter in the United States. So the Chavez and Maduro administrations in Venezuela are not only on the side of the working class and oppressed and the people in Venezuela, they are on the side of the people around the world, as they have proven many times again with the heating oil assistance program and many other initiatives across the world. So we stand by them here at Rise Fighting. The Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela continues. We wish the people there in Venezuela well on their voting today, and we will report here on Rise Fighting on ongoing developments in Venezuela. All right, Rick, back to you.
Right on. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, the U.S. has been all over Latin America, like just about every country in Latin America. And if any of our listeners ever want to delve a little deeper into what foreign policy has been in Latin America and actually all around the world, I do recommend this book. I've probably mentioned it on this show before, Killing Hope, U.S. Military and CIA Interventions Since World War II. And that book just goes nation by nation, the history of U.S. foreign policy, the interventions, obviously, by the military and the CIA. And there is a section on El Salvador, on Cuba, on Nicaragua, on Guatemala, Argentina, Chile. man, just all around the world as well. There is a chapter on Russia, on China, just so it gives you a good material history of you know why certain foreign policy is as it is now. So I do recommend that book. And thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much. It's been a minute since we broadcasted, and that's why sometimes I get on here and remind people to subscribe or follow or whatever it is you do, share if you'd like as well. Just so you can stay in the loop. We do try to broadcast once a week, but we're just two people with lives as well, and sometimes our personal lives take us away from the show for a little bit. We always love doing the show and we always love talking about labor, but this time around it was, I think, a month. So we were away a little longer than usual this month. So yeah, please, if you like the show, go ahead and subscribe. We Rise Fighting Labor Podcast on any of the platforms. And thank you always for listening. Love and solidarity to all. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.